It seems like AI is popping up everywhere we look these days. Spam filters, Arc and copy, even. It's kind of wild. But
Yeah.
the one that really gets me thinking is how it's shaking things up for software developers.
Yeah, it really is a whole new ballgame out there. The potential for AI to completely change how we build software is huge. We're really just starting to scratch the surface.
And what really grabs me is this whole idea of amplified developers. We hear so much about AI replacing jobs, right? But this is different. This is about like giving developers superpowers. At least that's what some of these articles you shared seem to be saying.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating about it. It goes way beyond just automating the boring stuff. It's really about like this powerful synergy between, human creativity and the raw power of AI.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Yeah. You've got this stack of articles here about AI powered development. And the first thing that jumps out is this term AI copilots.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that sounds way cooler than your average autocomplete, you know?
It is a good way to think about it, though, because it is so much more than just, suggesting the next word in your sentence or line of code in this case. They're analyzing entire code bases, suggesting solutions, even trying to, like, understand the intent behind what you're trying to build. It really is like a whole bunch of different AI parts working together.
Okay, so like walk me through this. What are these mysterious AI parts that make an AI copilot tick?
Well, you've got your autocomplete, of course, but then there are, chatbots baked right into the coding environment, context engines that keep track of everything going on in a project, and filtering systems to help developers find exactly what they need.
Wow. Sounds like a lot happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But this article here, it mentions how much of this is still a black box for developers.
Hmm.
And that doesn't seem great if we want to give developers more control, right?
It's a huge challenge for sure. You see, developers, they like to know how things work, tinker, troubleshoot. When these AI systems are, well, opaque, it can be tough to trust them completely or know what to do when things go sideways, which, let's face it, they always do. Transparency is key, and that's something the industry is, well, wrestling with right now.
Yeah, for sure. And on top of that, it seems like the whole AI development scene is about to get even more, well, complex. This article mentions new components popping up, like async engines and training engines. Can you demystify those a bit? What are we talking about here?
Sure. Think of async engines like the ultimate multitaskers, right? They let these AI systems handle a bunch of things at the same time, which means faster responses, smoother workflow for developers, and training engines. That's where the real magic of, machine learning comes in. These engines let the AI learn from your coding style, your preferences, even your mistakes, and, just get better over time.
So it's like having an apprentice that learns as you go, but, way more efficient.
Exactly. And it's not just about these individual pieces getting smarter. This article I have here, it talks about three big trends that are going to shake things up even more.
Ooh, hit me with those trends. What are we talking about here?
All right, so first up is specialization. We're going to see AI models that are like really good at very specific development tasks, need to refactor a huge chunk of code. There's an AI for that. Need to optimize for performance. AI's got you covered.
So like a whole team of AI specialists at your beck and call. I
Yeah.
like it. What else?
Next is integrations. We're going to see AI woven into like every step of making software from, planning and design all the way to testing and deployment. It'll be less like a separate tool and more like this invisible assistant always working in the background.
And lastly, you're killing me here.
And lastly, and this is maybe the most important one, modularity.
Modularity. Okay, you're going to have to break that one down for me.
So imagine, instead of being stuck with one big AI system, you could pick and choose the best AI tools for each job, right? Like building your own custom toolkit. That's what we're talking about with modularity.
Ah, okay. So developers can mix and match, find the AI tools that fit their own style and workflow. Kind of like assembling your own personal coding superhero squad. But, if we're heading toward this future where developers are basically conducting their own AI orchestras, it makes you wonder, what does it even mean to be an amplified developer in this brave new world?
Now that is the million-dollar question, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into next.
Okay, you've officially piqued my interest. Let's take a look at what it actually takes to become one of these amplified developers.
So At its core, being an amplified developer is about, taking control, becoming the conductor of your own AI orchestra, if you will. It's
Right.
about using these powerful tools to, enhance your own skills, your creativity, not being replaced by them, right?
So less humans versus AI, more like humans with AI.
Exactly. It's about, actively shaping these AI systems, molding them so they fit your workflow, almost like they become an extension of your own thinking.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
But how do we actually get there? How does a developer go from just using AI tools to becoming this like amplified developer we've been talking about?
Well, these articles you sent, they offer some really practical advice, actually. They talk about 5 key things developers can focus on, even today, to start down that path.
5 things, huh? All right, I'm all ears. Lay it on me.
Okay, so number 1 is all about establishing what they call an architecture of participation.
Architecture of participation. Sounds a little formal for something to do with coding, don't you think? What's that all about?
Yeah, it's a mouthful, I know. But the idea is actually pretty simple. It's about moving away from this whole black box approach to AI and building systems that are like designed for collaboration from day one.
So making sure developers can, peek under the hood, tinker around, give feedback, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's about giving developers the tools to understand how these AI systems work, adjust parameters, even swap out different AI models to see what works best for them.
Because one size fits all rarely does.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in coding, where everyone's got their own style.
You got it. And this source, it really stresses how important it is to build what they call modular AI systems. Think of it like Lego blocks, but for code. Developers can easily swap components, build custom workflows, even share their own creations back with the community.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about developers using AI in a vacuum, but about creating this culture of sharing, collaboration, and, always improving within the entire developer community.
That's the key. This open, collaborative approach, that's what's going to lead to the most powerful and effective AI-powered workflows. That's how we'll unlock the real potential here.
Collaboration is key for sure. But what about the AI models themselves? Or are we kind of stuck with whatever some tech giant decides to release?
That's where the second action item comes in,
Mhm.
enabling the right models for the job. It's all about choice and having options.
Okay, tell me more. What does that look like, practically speaking?
Well, just like a carpenter wouldn't use a hammer for everything, right? Developers need access to a whole toolbox of AI models, each one perfect for a specific coding task.
So, need to write a complex algorithm. There's an AI model for that. Need to debug some, messy legacy code. There's an AI for that too.
You got it. And the exciting part is that this field is constantly evolving. We're seeing new, more specialized AI models all the time. This source actually suggests that developers shouldn't be locked into using just one system or one company's tools. Imagine a world where they can experiment, try out different models, see what works best for them at any given time.
So instead of one size fits all AI assistant, it's more like having like a whole team of specialists, right? Each with their own unique skills. Now that's a great way to put it. And this article, it even talks about using a proxy server as a kind of central hub to manage all these different AI models.
A proxy server for AI. Okay, I'm not sure I'm following.
Okay, so picture this. You've got all these different AI models out there, and they all kind of speak their own language, right? The proxy server, it's like a universal translator. It lets developers easily switch between different models without having to worry about whether they're compatible or not.
Okay. So it's about making the experience smooth for developers, even as this AI landscape gets more, diverse and complex.
That's it. It's about giving developers the freedom to explore, experiment, and basically build their own personalized set of AI tools.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But with all this, experimentation and customization, wouldn't it be easy to kind of lose track of what's actually working? Oh, that's a great point. And it brings us to our third action item, measuring and improving system metrics. It's like with any tool or process, you need to be able to track how AI is actually impacting your work if you want to get the most out of it.
So it's not enough to just throw AI at the problem and hope for the best.
Hmm.
We need data, right? Like hard numbers to tell us what's working, what's not, and where we can improve.
Data is absolutely crucial. And the good news is that these AI systems are practically built for data collection, right? We can crack everything. We can see which AI features are being used the most, which ones are actually making developers more productive, even what kind of errors or biases might be creeping in.
Wow. So we can get like a super detailed view of how these systems are changing, how software is actually made, almost like having X-ray vision into the whole coding process.
Exactly. And this article, it keeps coming back to this idea of development data.
Development data. Okay, fill me in. What is that exactly?
So basically, it's a detailed record of everything that happens when someone is coding. The steps they take, the decisions they make, the tools they use, even their thought processes, if you can believe it.
Wow.
By capturing all of that and then, analyzing it, we can learn so much about how AI is changing how we create software.
So it's like a diary, but for the entire software development process. I bet that could be incredibly valuable, not just for making existing AI tools better, but for designing even more powerful ones in the future, right?
Absolutely. This source actually suggests building systems that can collect and analyze this data automatically. Imagine like dashboards that visualize key metrics and give developers real-time feedback on how AI is impacting their work.
Wow, that would be huge. Instead of just going on gut feeling, developers would have actual data to tell them how AI is affecting their productivity, the quality of their code, even how satisfied they are with their jobs, right?
Exactly. It's about giving developers data, not just tools. And that's key for building trust and making sure these AI systems are transparent.
This is really painting a picture of what the future of software development could look like. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's talk about this fourth action item, standardizing permissions and integrations. It seems like with all these different tools and data flying around, things could get pretty messy.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's like we're building this incredibly complex system of AI tools and data, right? And if we're not careful, it could easily turn into a free-for-all.
It really is. It's a bit like building a house. You can have the best architects, the best materials, but if the plumbing and the electrical aren't hooked up right, you're going to have problems.
And in software, those pipes and wires are the data pipelines and integrations that connect all these different AI tools. So how do we make sure everything's up to code?
That's where having clear guidelines and rules becomes super important. These articles, they really hammer home how important it is to standardize how data is accessed and used both by the developers and these AI systems.
So setting boundaries for what the AI can and can't do, making it crystal clear what information it can see, what it's allowed to do with it, and what areas are like completely off limits.
Exactly. And it's not even just about security, although obviously that's a big one. It's also about making sure these systems have the right information at the right time to actually be useful.
Right, because an AI assistant that can't access the information it needs isn't very helpful.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. If you ask an AI to help you debug some code, it needs to see the code, sure, but it might also need like logs, documentation, even previous bug reports, right?
It's like giving it all the clues to solve a mystery.
Yes. And this source, it really pushes for this idea of standardization across the board. When everyone's playing by the same rules, using the same data formats and all that, it becomes way easier to share information, connect different tools, build on each other's work.
It's like instead of needing a translator for every AI tool out there, we can all start speaking the same language.
Exactly. That kind of standardization, that would be a game changer. It would make it so much easier to bring new developers up to speed, add new tools as they come out, just keep the whole thing running smoothly.
So we're talking about a more efficient, more collaborative, and ultimately more powerful way to develop software. But there's one last piece of the puzzle I want to get to. Open source interfaces. This is the fifth and final action item, and it kind of feels like it ties everything together, wouldn't you say?
It really does. Open source interfaces are what will really let us tap into the collective brain power of the whole developer community. It could really change how we think about AI development.
Okay, so indulge me for a second. When we say open source interfaces in this context, what are we really talking about? Help me wrap my head around it.
Okay, so imagine the software layer that sits between developers and all these AI systems, right? It's the tools, the protocols, the standards, all of that determines how developers actually use and control those AI models.
So it's like the dashboard of a car, right? Doesn't matter how powerful the engine is if the steering wheel and the pedals don't work the way you expect.
Perfect analogy. And just like we have standard interfaces for things like USB ports or Wi-Fi, we need the same kind of standardization and openness for these AI development tools.
So developers could easily switch between different AIs, plug in new ones as they're developed, even contribute their own improvements.
Exactly. It's about making it fair, so
Hmm.
anyone can innovate, whether you work at Google or you're, tinkering in your basement.
Now that's what I'm talking about. But there's another side to this, right? It's not just about making the technology open source, it's about the data too, yeah.
You got it. Right now, a lot of the data that's used to train these really powerful AI models is, well, it's locked away. It's controlled by a small number of big companies.
Which makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Data is valuable, especially with AI, but I can see how that could stifle things.
It totally can. If only a few companies control all the data, they control where AI goes. But if we have these open interfaces, we can start to, democratize that access and let a lot more developers contribute.
It's like instead of having a VIP section, we're opening the doors to everyone.
I love that. And that's where the development data we talked about earlier comes back in. If we make the interfaces that collect and manage this data open source, we can create this massive diverse data set that can be used to build even better, more effective AI tools for everyone.
This is seriously exciting stuff. But, it also feels pretty ambitious. I'm curious, what do you think this amplified future will actually look like in reality? Will we see developers like kicking back, sipping coffee while the AI churns out code?
It definitely gets the imagination going, right? But if we think back to other big shifts, like when DevOps became a thing, there's a pattern. It's about augmenting, not replacing.
Okay, so walk me through this DevOps comparison. What can we
Ah.
learn from that?
Sure. So when DevOps came around, it didn't get rid of system administrators or, operations teams. Their jobs just changed. They became these facilitators, making sure that the code flowed smoothly from, the developers to the users.
So instead of like manually setting up servers and pushing out updates, they were building automated systems and focusing on the bigger picture.
Yes. And I think we'll see the same thing with amplified developers. They'll become like architects, right? Building these AI-powered systems, tweaking the models, and focusing on the most creative parts of software development.
It's like leveling up, going from a code monkey to a code conductor,
Right.
like leading the orchestra instead of just playing one instrument.
I love that. And this could free up developers to work on harder, more interesting problems. The kind of problems that require human intuition and, creativity that AI, at least for now, just can't replicate.
So instead of taking jobs away, it could actually create completely new jobs and opportunities like AI system architect or development data scientist.
Exactly. And it won't happen overnight, of course. It'll take time for, best practices to develop, for the tools to mature, for everyone to get on board.
That's why these 5 actions we talked about are so important. They're like a roadmap to help developers get ready for this amplified future, even if they aren't ready to, build their own AI-powered development tools from the ground up.
Absolutely. It's about taking small but important steps today to build a better future for software development, a future that's more collaborative, more innovative, and, well, more human.
It's about seeing AI not as a threat, but as this powerful tool, as an ally. And honestly, that's something that's important for everyone, not just developers.
It really is. AI is everywhere, right? So it's more important than ever that we remember that, we're still in control. We have the power to decide how this technology is used, how it affects us.
It's a future full of possibilities.
Hmm.
Some exciting, some maybe a little scary, if we're being honest. But if we embrace this whole amplified development thing, we can create a future where humans and AI work together to build some pretty amazing things.
I love it. We're not just coding the future, we're coding it together, and hopefully for the better.
Well said. And on that note, I'm going to leave our listeners with this. If AI can make developers better at what they do, what other things can it do? What other human endeavors could it transform? And more importantly, what will you do with that power? That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those big questions.